Hello everyone, welcome to Marian's World. If you were here last week, it might come as no surprise to you that I'm working on my coat, because I really missed working on it and it just needed something to remind me that that's what I wanted to do. So I'm going to cut you into the video where I'm stitching Meadow Cranesbill onto the back of my lovely linen coat. I hope you enjoy it. As you can see, I've started to paint some fabric ready for the colour of my flower, and I actually have a flower petal there just to give me the idea. Now I know this will dry lighter. I've got my Inktense here and I'm just going to use whatever likely colours, and I'll give it a bit of a variation. I'm using a big brush and I've already pre-wet my fabric because it's just nicer the way the colour moves through. I'm going to make some greens and some Meadow Cranesbill colour. My fabric's on top of some greaseproof paper that I've used before. I use it every time I'm using the Inktense on the fabric. So here goes with some extra colour. I'm just going to be picking it up almost just like a paint palette. I've used plenty water. I think I wanted a bit more violet. Remembering that I'll be cutting petals out, so I'm not particularly bothered if it's patchy. I will just give good variation. And I'm just going to darken this down a bit, I think. I like the purpley one, but a bit of that blue isn't going amiss either. A combination of both of them I think looks just about perfect. And I'll also do some green while I'm on, and I'll start with a yellowy green. This piece of fabric is a thrifted napkin. The last time I was at the big car boot sale, there was a gentleman selling a whole pile of them. He didn't want very much, and it's really lovely old cotton. They're not linen, but they're a heavyweight cotton and they're very nice. And I knew that there was all sorts that I'd be able to do with them. One of which obviously is using it for painting. So I'm going to leave that as that bright colour, and I'm going to go for a darker colour. Yep, that looks good to me. Just blend them together a bit. Just had a thought to put some red on because I know they have red stems. And in the end, my fabric's ending up super colourful. It looks beautiful. I think I'll drop some colour onto the paper, and I'll use this last little bit of wet fabric to mop the colour up and just see what happens with that. Okay, I've made a bit of a inky looking piece of water, and I'm just going to turn that over and see what colours, what patterns I get. It's always a nice way of getting the marks onto the fabric. And that looks super lovely to me. Okay, this is now going to dry, and I will come back when it's dry and I'm ready to put my flowers on. It's the next morning, my fabric has dried beautifully and I've got some petals of Meadow Cranesbill here and they are just the perfect colour that I've got on there, so I am exceptionally pleased with that. I'm lucky that I'm working with a piece of real life flower because I'm going to use some bundle web and I'm going to draw out my flowers on a piece of this first and then iron that onto the back of my fabric, cut it out, applique it on and over embroider the whole thing. So first, to get a little pattern. So I've got my bundle web, which is also called Wonder Under or Vliseline. Vliseline's the company, and it's a paper backed web of glue. And if I pull the paper back, this is also what I used for the crashing. If you saw that video, and I can link it to you. So that's glue, and it means that you can iron on this side because your iron's on top of the paper, and then when you pull the paper back you can then iron that fabric onto another piece of fabric. And so that's what I'm going to use it for today. And because I've got a real live flower, I'm just going to use this petal as a template, just very carefully. And the shape can be refined as it gets cut out just the same. So that's one of my big flowers. And I'd also like a leaf. So I'm going to just take one of my leaves off. And I'm just going to get the actual size of it really. I'm not going to be drawing around. So I need something there, just to get the idea of what size and how far it goes into the middle. By doing this with the bundle web means I can get these accurate shapes. Okay, well I'll do all of them and I'll take you to the next stage. I've cut my pieces out and I'm going to iron them onto the back of my cloth. And so I'll just turn this over. And really, anywhere is going to be lovely for the flowers. But I quite like the dark area that's here, so I'm just going to iron the whole piece onto there with a hot iron. And it's pressing rather than ironing like that. So you just press and lift and then press until the bundle web is bonded to your fabric. It doesn't take long, but you do need the hotness. No steam. And you can tell when it's stuck because when you lift the corner the paper will come up but the glue bit won't. And I'll put the other leaf on this dark bit, and then I'll choose a lighter colour for the little leaves. And I may need more, I'm not sure yet, it depends how the composition goes. Put that one on, put this one on, and of course I can amend the colour if I want to once I've stitched it, or I can amend the colour with stitching as well. So I'm just going to cut out all of my shapes and then I'll come back to you when I'm ready to do my embroidery. Well, that was a marathon of cutting, and even though I simplified the leaf design somewhat, it was still quite intricate, and I don't think I could have got that quite anyway with fabric. Definitely couldn't do needle turned applique that fine. I feel as if I've worked out a composition and know where I want things to be, so I am just going to take the paper backing off, which is just peeling it off like that, and then ironing these onto my coat. Just do them one at a time, press them on, doesn't take much. I could actually be a lot taller than this. I'm trying to do them life size, but Meadow Cranesbill can grow to sort of 3 or 4 feet. The flowers are the right size and everything else will just have to be as it is. So I'm going to iron these on. I think I need another quite a big leaf for the bottom, but I'm going to work with it as it is. The only other thing I've done is, where are they? I took my reddish pieces and I've amended the yellow into a green so that that comes up for a stalk. So I've got, okay, I'm all set up and ready to stitch. I've got my tangle here. I've pulled out some likely threads. I've got an off-white, a brown, a reddish purple, a bit of pink, because I'm going to start with the flowers. I've got my thread trays to one side and my scissors and my needle. I'm using a finish needle with a sharp point. I only need a small eye because I'll be mainly working with just one strand, and so here goes. And I'm going to start with this flower here. I'll bring you in close and thread up my needle. Now I am just working in my hand because I don't want the hoop marks on my linen coat, and I've come up right in the middle, and I'm going to start by just doing radiating straight stitches from the middle because I want the middle to look more white, and I don't have to put them all in a row going round. I'm going to do what I usually say to people to do, which is to put in a skeleton framework. And so I'm just going to get all the stitches going in the right direction. But I don't have to even go up the middle all the time. I can go down and up as it suits me. And once I've got a framework in, I can go around and keep thickening that up until it looks like what I want it to look like. It's always more helpful to do, if you're trying to fill in an area, to do like a skeleton framework first. It means you can get all your stitches going exactly right. You don't wander off the angle that you want them to be in. As I go around the second time, I'm just going to make sure that I don't make them all the same length. I can go down to the middle, but the upper end up the petal can be a different length every time. And I don't have to end them right in the middle either. It'll be difficult as I get more and more stitches in. So I'll just end them a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, wherever they want to go. I hope you can hear the birds there. It's been a lovely day yesterday, and I'm stitching early this morning because hopefully I'm going to be out in my garden later on this afternoon. Feels more like June weather than it has been of late. I just want to do around here to get a sense of the flower, and I'll sort of put this framework in, get some stitching on the outside of the petals, and then refine it all. And so what it means is that you're bringing everything together in one, rather than finishing one piece and then another piece. I sort of bring the whole thing up at the same time, and then at any point there you can then stop, and then you don't have to carry on refining if you don't want to. So in all my array of threads, I do not have a colour that will match that in at all. So I'm going on a different tack, and I've got this lavender pink. I did have a piece of it in my tangle, which is what I'd put in my needle, and I have found that I still have some of it there, so I'm using that because the veins of the petals are actually pink. And so I'm going to use this to do the veining of the petals and meanwhile do tiny stitches around the edge. And so that should work well, I think. So I'll come off the petal. I'm just going to do little fly stitches coming down to start the veining. So I'm coming up through my loop. So my working thread's coming from the top take a little diagonal stitch and I'll put my needle over that thread to make a fly stitch, and I'm going to put the stalk of the fly stitch right the way down into the white. And I'm going to go back up and do the exact same thing again. In fact, I'll start on the side here, about there, and I'll go all the way around. In this way I'm still stitching the petal down, but I am doing the veining at the same time. So I'll lay the thread, I'll audition that thread into where I want it to be. There's no point in going in a different direction. I'll lay it down till I know it's where I want it to be, and then just put my needle down to anchor it. And if I feel it needs more stitching at the edge, then I'll put more stitching in, but at the moment I feel as if this will just be perfect. So if you're wanting to embroider flowers, this is the way to sort of just build up whatever you're doing. You don't have to be daunted by looking at a picture of something quite complicated and thinking, oh, I can't do that. Well, in the end, you're starting with a shape and then just looking at your photograph or your source material. For me, I'm lucky I've got the live flower here, but if I didn't have that, if it was a flower that I didn't grow in my garden or it wasn't the right season for it, I'd just be looking at a photograph online, and sometimes I print it out so that I've got it in front of me rather than looking on a screen. It means that I can actually print it out bigger than life size. But as I say, today I've got the flower in front of me, and so I'll just go around doing my threads where I know they need to be. I'm always worried I'll go right out of focus, because when I started my channel I used to really have problems focusing in on the embroidery and getting it near enough. So I don't really have some complicated setup. I don't have an overhead camera, I don't have proper lighting. I just do with what I've got. I do have a camera. I'm not doing this on my phone, but it's just on a tripod. It's not on any fancy, what are gimbals, or I don't know what they're called. I don't have any of that anyway. So just carrying on with the fly stitches and getting them right into that middle where I've already put the white. Oh, the wind's blowing the curtain. That's quite nice. Nice cool breeze. As you can see, I automatically use my thumb to put the thread down to see where it's going to go. Well, you can see how those two are going now, and I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to carry on and I'm going to get all of these done, and I'll take this flower to completion. I've finished all of the petals and I'm now just going back around with the white, not exactly lengthening the stitches, more thickening it up so that it's a definite white towards the middle. And then I'm going to put a green French knot right in the middle. I've left that little French knot a little bit open. I want to see the middle of it, and I'm coming up with 2 strands of quite a dark maroony red in my needle to make the anther. And I'm just going to pull it out a little bit and thicken the end up with a double stitch. So I'll do 1 stitch and then I'll just make an extra stitch just to make the end look a little bit thicker, like a little granny toss stitch. 3 together. There we go. I'm going to use this blue pearl cotton here actually. It's very dark, but it's got a little bit of variation in it, and I think that'll work really well. I haven't got anything in my tangle that's suitable other than a dark brown, which I didn't really like. Now you can't really see the stalks on the stamens, so I'm going to just go ahead and put little tiny seed stitches in for the stamens, and then if I feel I want to, I'll put pale yellow stalks. but maybe on the scale that I'm doing, I just do the little stamen heads. So I'm just going to come up and do quite small stitches. I would have done 2 stitches if I'd been using my single strand of floss, but because this is a pearl cotton, it's got a bit of thickness to it, and I'm just going to do maybe about a 1/16 of an inch or 2 millimeters of a stitch. Sprinkle them around. In fact, I can show you a close-up of my flower. I hope you can see that the anther is pinky red, and those stamens are actually a purpley blue. Well, I'm very pleased with that, and I don't think I need to do the stalks on the stamens at all, so I'm going to count that flower as finished, and I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to finish the other 2 big ones. My flowers are all finished. I have finished the 2 big leaves, and there were some mammoth stitching on them. So I'm just going to demonstrate on the small ones how I did it, because I've actually just used a combination of slanted blanket stitch, fly stitch, feather stitch, just whatever loopy stitch made the right effect. And it's because I wanted every little lobe and indent caught down, and the leaves are quite heavily veined. So I've come up in this little one here to show you how I've done it. So I've come up inside, and I'm taking my first stitch out to the lobe of the leaf. Just going to catch it down, take a little stitch, coming up to do a fly stitch, and I'm going to go straight across that lobe and come up to do a fly stitch. And so now we've got a start. So now I want to go in and I want to hook every little indent down and every lobe. And the way that the leaves go is they don't have a central vein right down the middle. They quite often have 2 or 3 going down. So I'm going to go into that little indent and go into the middle as if I'm going to do feather stitch. I sort of am doing feather stitch, I suppose. So I'll hook that down, and I'll come over to this lobe, and I'll come up at about the same place and hook that down too. And I'll come out to this lobe. And what happens is I end up working down as far as I can, and then I come back and fill in the stitches I think I've missed out. So I don't want to carry on doing fly stitch or down here. I'm going to swap onto a slanted back stitch, which is just like a half feather really. So I'm just going to go down this side, working this side only now. And if I feel I can get another stitch in, I put it in and come down to hook that piece down. And I'm ending up at the bottom of my leaf. So now I need to work the other side of this leaf here, or any of these lobes. So actually I just go up to wherever's convenient. So I'm going to come up to this one here, because it's the shortest way I can go. I'll go out to the point, up to take a fly stitch coming down, and I'm just ignoring my little, I'm coming up wherever I want really, not necessarily at the bottom of the stitch or anything. I'll turn my work around a bit, and so come into the lobe here, into the little indent to take a feather stitch. I'll go out to the other one and take a feather stitch that's not really lengthening any, it's going to be the same size. I actually just want to hook that one down, so that ended up turning into a fly stitch instead. That's what I mean, it's just whatever stitch you need to do, it doesn't necessarily have to have a name. And so I just work back and forward, up and down, taking whatever stitch pleases me to take. That's the best I can say really. You just can be quite freeform. As long as the stitches are all radiating up from the bottom or down from the lobe, whichever way you want to think about it, there's no point in them going sideways or like I've got there, crossed stitch. So I'll just take that back out and go in the proper way. And they all lead down to the base of the leaf, then everything's okay. And pretty soon, or rather not pretty soon because it took ages, eventually, I'll say eventually instead, eventually you have an embroidered leaf. That one's done. I'm actually using this vintage crochet cotton, which just seemed to be the right colour. But I think my fabric was a little bit too pale to start with, so I may just amend the colour a little bit with the Inktense. I definitely did want the colour to be darker, and so I have made up an extremely watery mixture, and I'm just letting the fabric suck the water off the brush to amend the colour. It just sort of sucks it in. It's not going into the linen at all, it is only going onto the leafy fabric, but it is very, very watery. You just sort of have to touch it and the colour will suck into the fabric. But I'm definitely more happy with the darkness. This of course will still dry lighter, but I think I'll have done enough. Okay, ready for the stalks. And I'm going to use a combination of this lovely variegated cotton, which is a lovely yellowy greens. The yellowy green is more of the colour than the bluey green, but it's not a matter to me, it'll be fine. So I'm going to use that, and I've changed my needle to still a sharp point but a larger eye to get that thicker cotton through, and I've got quite a long length because I'm going to work up and down. And the other thing I'm going to use is this strip that I painted in, and I went from a sort of a muddy red up to green. But I'll just start by coming up into my first flower, and as you can see I've made some soap lines just to keep myself straight whilst I've got everything crumpled up in my hand. So I'm coming up straight underneath this flower, and I'm just going to make some running stitches to put my framework in, because I am going to be doing a whipped running stitch, which is one of my favourites, but it works so well for this type of thing because you can thicken the line up as much or as little as you want. So I'm coming down with that stalk to the first leaf and going straight out to where I'm going to be putting some buds. Just adjust my line ever so slightly. And so now I'm just going to work back down by whipping into my running stitch that I've just put in. And I'll already be thickening the line up. So I'm making these running stitches even, they're not particularly small. For one thing, I just want it, it's almost like I'm tacking my pattern in. So I don't need to do anything too tiny. But another thing, it'll help with the whipping to have bigger stitches, and it'll just look nice. Actually, I should be putting in a leaf here, so I'll probably need to do extra leaves. You can see why I've used a long line of thread, because I'd soon be running out otherwise. And one stitch out for the flower, and then back down with my whipping. I will continue down, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'll work down to here, back out to this one, back in, out to that leaf, and I'm going to get the first framework in. The stems are starting to bring the whole thing together. When you're doing a whipped running stitch, you've got a couple of choices you can make. Once you've put the running stitches in and you've done your first piece of whipping, when you come back to do it again, you can choose to make the whip in the same direction as you've already put it in, which is what I'm doing here. which means that you're going to whip from the opposite side that you did originally when you come to do the second go. And what you will get is a twist that looks like a twisted thread, the twist that's on the thread, where all of the strands are running in the same direction all the time. However, what I like to do is just to whip in from the same side, so from my left hand side all the time, regardless of which direction I'm going, which means that I don't get that sort of a neat twist. I get more of a plait, like that one, as the threads are going first one way and then the other way. And that's the way I prefer it. So apart from it being easier because you're doing it from the same side every time, so I'm going to go up this one from the left, which is the same way I came down it from the left, but because I'm going the opposite direction, it's crossing the stitches over. I hope you're getting that on the camera. And then when I get to the top, so instead of coming that way to do the twist in the same manner, I'm still going to thread from my left hand side, and so the stitches are twisting again, they're crisscrossing again. And to me it makes a more even stem, which is what I'm after because I'm doing a flower. So I like the more even look of it than just the twist. But the twist in the same direction looks lovely once you've got it going. If I put another one on there, and as I put the third one in, you'll see how you get a lovely smoother twist, or a smoother whip to the stem. I'll just finish that one off and then show you what it looks like. So hopefully you can see that they're all running in the same direction. Those ones are crossed. And it's whichever one pleases you the most. For me, I like the crossed one, and I always do it from my left hand side on every time, regardless of the direction. So I've finished those stems for the moment. Still quite a bit to do on here, so I think I've already decided to make this a part 1 and do part 2 next week, because I've actually been stitching for 7 hours already, and that'll make quite a long video to edit. So I'm going to finish off with this, the bottom stem, which goes from red to green, and I'm going to get this couch down and then probably call it a day for today, because otherwise it's just gonna go on for ages and I'd probably have to split the video into 2 anyway. So I'm going to take this strip. I've cut about, well, it's bigger than a half, it's about 1 inch at the bottom and it's less at the top, just because I didn't cut it very, I just cut it very roughly. But I've done the colours for the bottom of the stem, and so I'm just going to start it rolling by twisting it. And I've got a piece of thread out of my tangle, which is a bit of a pale limey green. It is very similar to the coat, but that wasn't the intention. The intention was the colour that I wanted for the actual stem. So I'm going to pull a knot up into there and just sew this piece together. I'll just make sure I've got that wrap going. In fact, I can wrap my thread round a bit, which actually will work well. So I'm going to attach it into there, and I'm just going to overcast and make sure that is firmly attached. And now I'm going to start a wrap going. I want it as smooth as I can. That looks good to me, so I'm just going to keep twisting it and stitching it all at the same time. I'll get those ends in, and I'm happy to be just stitching over it. It doesn't have to not look like there's no stitching on it. It's an embroidery. I'm quite happy for the stitching to be visible. I'll just make sure I know where I'm headed. In fact, I'll put my soap line on again, just means I can keep an eye on where I'm going when I haven't got the coat held in the right direction. I can see where I'm heading for. So I'll just wrap that round, get a nice smooth curve, a smooth wrap, or a smooth twist, or not quite sure what to call it now. And then sew it down with stitches that are just going straight across. I'm not trying to hide them or anything like that. I just want the wrap to be nice and the stitches to hold it down. So I'm going straight over and back again. And they're quite close together, maybe about maybe a quarter of an inch, over and back again. It's so windy here today. I don't know whether you can hear the wind. I've been stitching out in the garden and I took my camera out so I could show you stitching beside where the Meadow Cranesbill is. My threads were all over the place. You couldn't hear me for the wind in the trees, so I came back in. I might just take the coat out when I'm finished this bit and give you a last reveal, like a look of it, with the flowers beside it, because I was stitching right next to them. Right, well, I'll finish this off and I'll show you it right at the end. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing that. I realised that it's not a finished piece yet, but that was over 7 hours of stitching, and I think the leaves took up quite a bit of that. Anyway, look forward to part 2 next week, where I will probably put some more buds on, definitely more stems. I need another great big leaf at the bottom, definitely, at least one, and some grasses, some really delicate grasses. So I wasn't expecting to do a 2-parter, but hey ho, that's the way it is, and it's still looking lovely. So I hope you'll just have a little look right at the end when I say bye, because I filmed a little bit of it out with the Meadow Cranesbill that's in my garden. Anyway, thanks for watching everyone, and it's been really nice to be working on my coat, and I'll be doing that next week too. Bye, and thanks for watching.